So I can go ahead and get started, I guess. Thanks for being here this morning. Really, the main purpose of this is for me just to hear what your concerns are and what your priorities are and that kind of thing. So, I'll respond where it's appropriate, I guess. So I don't think it'll be a problem, but I appreciate, the civil discourse and all. Everybody wants listening sessions, but especially on the federal level, those guys are often afraid to do it. I know, I won't mention the name, but I know one representative that the other party pays people to go around and follow him around and try and throw zingers at him and catch him and all that. So, it's just sort of counterproductive for good democracy. So I do appreciate just having the chance to have good discussion with you guys. So if somebody wants to start off, just give me something to talk about. And nobody wants to start off?
I'll do it. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, sure.
I know you do several of them. And I'm assuming it was coincidental that next to your sessions was this article on Jacksonport.
Oh.
And I know you're aware of these things, but Jacksonport becoming the 10th Door County municipality to pass a resolution. There'll be a couple more coming in November, I believe. Representing, well, that's over half the municipalities.
This is United to Amend for those
Right.
that are.
And the resolutions are calling on county to support Ute and Senator Say to support a bill that's currently sitting in the legislature, which would lead to I believe the bill asks, AGR 53 is asking for a statewide non-binding referendum, yes or no question, on whether Wisconsin should join 19 other states in calling for an amendment to undo Citizens United. And for those who may not know about it, the piece of Citizens United that's being questioned here is that it does away with any limits on super PAC money, corporations, individuals, etc. It's not talking about if I want to give Joel $50 or $200, we're not talking that direct money. It's that outside money that comes in and funds a large majority of all of those negative ads and disingenuous things that we have to put up with, a lot of BS. It's also, and maybe you'd have a take on this, affects the partisanship within legislatures, because if one person is getting a lot of money, the other one wants it, et cetera, et cetera. And it tends to lead towards, in our view, that voters are losing a voice because they're just plain getting outspent. When you've got $1 billion plus going into these elections, and it happens at all levels. The state Supreme Court, lots of money going in there for those elections when they're contested, state levels. So one, I guess, I'll toss it out as a question. You may not want to respond to it as a question. Is right now it's locked, that bill is locked in committee. It was last biennium also and never got out to simply even be discussed and made public. And I know people, I'm going to say the parties and politicians, and I don't mean politicians in a pejorative way, just people that are elected to do that, see this as bipartisan, or excuse me, see it as partisan, and they act on it in a very partisan manner and accuse each other of all this stuff. In Wisconsin, 115 communities, that includes the 10 Door County so far, have called on you guys to talk about this and to get to a referendum. Those 52 plus percent of the municipalities represent 62.5 of the Door County residents. Statewide, those 115 communities, 72 of them have run referendums, including county-wide referendums. Rock County, Paul Ryan's hometown. The referendums passed by an average of 78%. I believe the lowest was like in the 60s a while, up to 91% around Madison, as you would expect. So the question is, how do we get past that? Voters don't see this as a partisan issue. They're ticked off about the amount of money. And yet you guys are kind of locked into, you can't even talk about it, and it gets buried. Can you do something to help move that? What can you do? Are you willing to do? Do you want to comment? Do you believe in this? Whatever you want to say to the issue.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest, it's not gonna go anywhere right now. And I think just,
$100 it wouldn't work.
yeah, just in the last couple of days, the representative that has it in his committee,
Yeah.
maybe you saw that, had said that he will not give
Senator,
a hearing.
Representative Scott Allen.
Right, and he's,
And he called it, what was it, democracy at its worst, or something? He
Yeah,
had
I
some
didn't
weird
hear
quote
all- yeah.
of,
yeah, I will have a discussion with him. He's just a couple doors down from me. So, I mean, I'll certainly talk to him about it and what his feeling on it is. It's a deal, if it comes to the floor, if ever, and, who knows when that will ever happen, but I'll vote for it. But it's not something I'm gonna spend a whole lot of my political capital fighting for right now, just because it's hopeless, and I would rather spend that on things that I can actually get done. So that's my, that's my take on it, I guess.
and I do know that. Yes, and then ask him, we know his opinion of it, but his logic is convoluted going to.
Yeah, I saw that quote, but I didn't catch
And
the
he's
rest of
talking
it.
about, he's kind of dismissing the whole idea of grassroots referendum and resolutions and saying that's democracy at its worst, and talking about, well, if you want to do this, take it straight to for an amendment to the federal level. And it doesn't work, most of the time it doesn't work that way. This stuff usually bubbles up, and that's what democracy is about, is this referendum, resolutions, people expressing their will, then being represented, et cetera. So, in all due respects to the man, I've never met him, I'm sure he's great, but his logic is bullshit.
Well,
So if you just tell him Door County is telling you, and you're seeing that
Yeah.
through these resolutions,
Well-
and hopefully a countywide referendum at some point here.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely pass that on to him and talk to him about it. I didn't read the context of his quote, but it's
Right.
kind of a silly quote.
And I
But-
know once you start talking, if I had a nickel for every time I said something dumb.
Yeah.
But that's particularly dumb, when you're in a role like he's got and basically saying, no, we're not gonna even let this be put on a
Yeah.
public agenda for discussion. He's closing it down, so it's a little more. And I believe you have this, but I wanna give you a copy. These are the updated 115 communities, and I
Okay.
highlighted the Door County ones.
And Dan and I have met on this before.
Yeah, we've talked, yeah. He knew what exactly what I was gonna say before I opened my mouth.
Yeah.
Sturgeon Bay being the first, number 97 there in March, and of the last 11, I think, 9 of them, or last 10, I think 9 of them have been Door County.
I'll be honest with you, if you really want to see it go forward, you need to get some of the municipalities where a guy like Scott Allen lives.
And they're trying,
Yeah, because that's,
That's-
that'll be
yeah,
that,
absolutely, they
Um,
realize that.
I think until you put pressure on those people, and it's
Yeah.
southeast Wisconsin,
Right,
um,
I do, I understand that, and the loose affiliation of Wisconsin United of Men. And again, for those of you who don't know, that's just a volunteer organization, loose affiliates of groups working on this particular issue. And they've just kind of collated information. They're trying to get things to Scott Allen and postcards and people call it whatever they can do.
okay.
So that, they're trying to do that. But it's frustrating because as you've seen, even when we first met over a year ago, there are a lot of areas in there that are definitely blue, but there's a lot of them that are definitely red and a lot of mixed ones. And they're being ignored. I mean, their representatives are just saying, oh, that's nice,
Yeah.
we're not gonna do this. So if you can further that discussion among colleagues, we would really appreciate it.
Yeah,
And I'm saying we, because not only municipalities have been saving these up for the particular moment, not giving it to you now, but as we've done 3 presentations so far, we've got over 200 unofficial petition signatures just asking the county and again, yourself and the state to take this up.
well, I mean, I think honestly, increased funding with elections favors incumbents, right?
Oh,
So-
both
so you're-
sides.
Yeah, so
This is
you're,
not a
so you're
partisan
asking the
issue.
people that benefit from it
Exactly.
to,
Which is why it took over 202 years for Congress to pass an amendment to the Constitution saying they can't raise their own pay. That's been on the docket for 202 years, and it was finally, I believe it was the last actual amendment, which would be what, the 26th amendment, or 27th amendment to the Constitution, is that so I understand how that works.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
a big
sure you
uphill
do.
battle,
I'm
but
sure you do that,
we'd
yeah.
appreciate your support.
okay.
I'll shut up.
Okay, thanks.
Hey Joe, just out of curiosity, what are you most proud of that you guys have gotten done so far this session?
As a as a whole,
Yeah.
you know, I think
Well,
this.
two parts, one as a whole, and then Joel Kitchens.
Yeah, sure. You know, I think this was a pretty friendly budget overall. It was, because the state's economy is doing very, very well right now. The revenues were up and we spent less during the last biennium than had been expected. So I think the mood with my constituents is much better this time. When I did my first listening session 3 years ago, and it was in here, people couldn't get in the door.
Oh, wow.
You know, people were very angry. So in this budget, because of that, you know, we spent. I'm happy with the education part in general. The spending, it's the most that's ever been increased in one budget. There was part of that I was unhappy with that the governor vetoed, but overall I'm very happy with that. You know, I think, let's see, on the state level, what other things were in there? I guess that on the state level, that would be what I am the happiest with, I guess. For myself, you know, a couple of things that I got put in there just to help my district. One, there's a total maximum daily load study of the rivers of, it'd be Door, Kewaunee, Sheboygan, Manitowoc counties. And I kind of led that effort to get that put in there. And I think that's a really big step forward in cleaning up our waterways, the tributaries into the Great Lakes. It started out with me just looking at the Anape River, and then the DNR came back and said, well, we can get efficiency if we do all of them. Why don't we do that? And I was able to get my colleagues on board. And anyway, so I was very happy to get that done. More funding for Bay Shipbuilding there. They're continuing their process with the redoing their docks and all that. And Bay Ship obviously is the biggest employer in the area. So I'm very happy with that. So I guess those are some of the things that I've been happy with. Going forward, for me, will be announced in the next couple of weeks. I've been kind of talking about it for a while, but I'm going to be, myself and then Senator Luther Olson will be heading up a commission to rewrite the school funding formula. So I'm excited to do that. And we'll be traveling around the state listening to different people and doing that. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to and I'm proud of. So
Good.
So
I like that idea about school funding. Get a little bit more.
yeah. Well, that's the problem.
I know you're an advocate.
Yeah,
for
the
it.
problem is, of course,
I
everybody
really
thinks they
appreciate
deserve
that.
more,
Yeah.
a bigger piece of the pie. So that's the tough part of it politically, is everybody thinks they're getting shortchanged, but
And one of the smallest counties, so.
yeah. But the current formula it does not work very well for rural areas that are losing enrollment, and that's all of us. You know, all the
Yeah.
districts around here are losing enrollment, so it really penalizes those districts. So I want to change that. There are some districts that spend at a very low level. Southern Door would be one that really struggles, so we need to get that level up.
Yeah, I know you waited in a few, maybe it was months ago or something like that, try to help us out with the granary. Did you ever see this raise order coming at you?
No, I didn't. No, I saw it in Door County Daily News. That was the first
Yeah,
I'd seen
crazy.
it. So yeah, I've not, you know, with that part of that, I stayed out of that. It's
Yeah.
sort of a local issue. But
Yeah.
yeah. Anything you guys want to talk about back there?
Clean water, just keep the water clean.
Yeah.
Chris Kellums.
Yep.
I moved here 2 years ago from California. I have been born and raised a Republican. Came here and it was like time warp. When I left here 40 years ago, we were still in a very progressive environmental state. I came back and it was like, what happened? I came back for 3 reasons. All my friends in California say, why did you come here? And I said, well, they got water, number one. Little town of Sturgeon Bay and Door County has a great little hospital where I can get care, which if you go to a metropolitan city and you have an emergency and you go to the emergency room, you're counting hours to get health care. Whereas here you can go and get health care right away. And then in the city of Sturgeon Bay, we have a great compost pile. So between the water and the compost, I can grow anything. But I came back here and it was like, we're polluting everything. You've got the Back 40 mine thing going on. Yeah, that's in Michigan. You don't have much to say about that. It seems like, but you do have something to say. You can put your foot down as the state. Foxconn. I was in IT work in Silicon Valley. There's ways of cleaning up the water that they're going to pollute at incredible amount of water is going to be needed for their processes. It's very bothersome. There are ways of mitigating that. There are ways of cleaning it up, but you've got lots of metals and stuff that's going to be coming out into the water that we're all going to be dependent upon for at least for our tourist stuff and for drinking water. Here, the manure stuff going on here is outlandish. I can't believe you've got these factory farms that basically you're giving license for 10,000 cows, which is equivalent to a population of 180,000 people, and you're not asking them to process this manure in a good way. You can do combination processes, and yes, it's going to be expensive as hell. Our milk and dairy products, cost is going to go through the roof, but hey, if that's what we want, we're going to have to pay for it. There's methods of dealing with that. There are combinations of composting, of your liquid manure spreading, all that stuff. It needs to be looked at. Instead, everybody's gone to their corners. You got the farmers at one hand and people, environmentalists, kind of like me, at the other. And we need to meet in the middle. We need to find solutions. I came from a region in the country where you problem solve. You fix it. You find ways of fixing things. That's how Silicon Valley got built. You come up with ideas and you pursue them. And you go for the best and you put them together and make things work. And yeah, there'll be some failures, and yes, there's going to be a lot of cost. Foxconn, I've negotiated, this sounds racist, I'll just come right out, but I don't mean it to be racist. You know, we talk about fine German engineering in cars. You know, we tout German engineering. I'll tout Chinese negotiation. Have you ever negotiated with someone of Chinese descent on anything? I used to do that in my manufacturing business. I had Chinese doctors I'd had to negotiate with. Talk about a tough bunch. On Foxconn, sorry Joel, we're getting screwed. There's no other way to say it. Just on the budget items, and especially the environmental concerns over time. We're looking at a very short-term solution of touting jobs, which we don't even have the educated people to do the jobs. Silicon Valley, all of our neighbors, we had neighbors from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, everywhere to do the jobs in Silicon Valley. You think you're going to take a bunch of people from Wisconsin and train them real quick to do these tech jobs? That's not going to happen. We have we're so low in this whole country on our engineering education. And it's not just in Wisconsin, but it's countrywide. We're very few graduates of engineering schools. So we need to support the engineering. If you want Foxconn, we got to support STEM, courses. I'm sure you're aware of that. But I think we're selling out too much on Foxconn. I really do. That's my opinion. There are ways to mitigate the environmental impacts that are coming with that. I've kind of rolled over and said, okay, it's going to happen. We're going to get screwed. And I'm just going to say it publicly. We're going to get screwed. That's all.
Well,
Joel, do you,
that-
excuse me, Joel, do you know why they're not building it in their country, why they want to build here?
Yeah.
Because of environmental reasons.
You covered, I mean, I could spend the next couple hours answering your
Yeah.
question, I guess.
I know,
You kind of covered a good bit of ground there. I'll agree with you first off that healthcare, education, and environment are reasons people come here. That's why we have people that move to this area. Where to start? Should I start with Foxconn, I guess? I disagree with you on Foxconn. I think from an environmental standpoint, yes, they will use a lot of water, not nearly as much as some of those cities down there, but nonetheless, we have to abide by the Great Lakes Compact. So every bit of water they take out, they have to return clean water in return for that. So that's not just a statewide thing. So we're not going to be putting, heavy metals into the lake with that. There's a huge misconception on that we've rolled back environmental protections for Foxconn. It's just not true. They have to meet every single requirement that everybody else does, except the only thing that has changed has been the permitting process. Right now, for state wetlands, those are wetlands not connected to waterways. For a normal person, if you interfere with those, you have to mitigate for every acre you damage, you have to mitigate 1.2 acres back. For Foxconn, it's going to be 2 acres back. For other people, they have to get the permission ahead of time. Foxconn, they've already hired a person in the DNR that their sole job is going to be to watch over Foxconn, so they will make sure that all that stuff is done correctly. I've been working with some of the Democratic representatives from that area, and in fact, Corey Mason was just elected the mayor of Racine, and he's one of the main ones I've been working with, and we're hoping to put out sort of a website to track everything that's done at Foxconn so that the public can be reassured that everything is being done according to the permits. And the DNR supports that. They said, well, we can do a website. And it's like, no, if you do it, it's not going to have any credibility. Everybody's going to think you're just cooking the books or whatever. So that's our plan, is to put something out like that to make sure that all those environmental protections are met. And I'm very confident, and Corey is confident, and the other people from that area, that if it's done the way it's supposed to be done, there should not, I mean, any industry, obviously, you're talking about 1,000 acres they're going to be using down there. But, when I look at Foxconn economically, and I know, Pat, you're all on this, that she's been very critical of Foxconn as well. That area down there, the Milwaukee area, Racine, Kenosha, that used to be a booming area. That was a model for the country, that you had a lot of working class jobs, and it was just a wonderful community. But in the 70s, all that heavy industry started leaving. I mean, we can't compete in this country for people that just sit there and turn a bolt all day. You can get that done more cheaply in a lot of other places, but we can compete on the high-tech stuff. So this is an opportunity to bring a whole new industry into that area. People criticize it, but it's like, I ask, what is your plan for Milwaukee? Do we just put more and more Band-Aids on all the social problems that are caused by the lack of good-paying jobs down there? This is an opportunity to turn that area around, I believe, and it's an industry that doesn't exist in this country. So it's not like we're stealing from one state. This has never happened in this country. As far as the workforce, Foxconn obviously believes that they can get the workforce here. You're absolutely right. We don't have enough people in Wisconsin to do this. But Wisconsin right now, 60% of the engineers we educate leave the state. We do a tremendous job of educating kids for every other state. And this is an opportunity to turn that around. So we are, as far as the STEM stuff, you're absolutely right on that. And we're working towards getting an engineering school at UW Green Bay. In general, I think we have too many campuses and they shouldn't all be trying to do everything. But engineering in the Fox Valley is very, very important with all the industry we have. The UW system is very supportive of Foxconn. Foxconn's been working with them already in helping them with curriculum to develop more engineers, more people that will be able to come in there. I think there's just going to be a lot of benefit when you look at the other industries already that are looking at moving into Wisconsin to support Foxconn. It's a controversial bill, and I certainly got negative email about it, but I feel very confident that it's going to turn out to be a good thing for us. You can disagree, time will tell. Again, is it a gamble? Certainly, anything like this, there's an element of risk in it. But I look at what if we don't do it? We just watch Milwaukee continue to circle the drain. I just think it's a good opportunity for us, and I think it's going to turn that around as far as bringing young people back into the state. On the groundwater, And as far as why they are doing it, not in China, but here, you know, I think they see the writing on the
How you
wall
doing,
that,
Toby?
that we are not going to continue to send them billions of dollars every year without some of it being done here. And that's why they're doing it here. I'm sure they can do it more cheaply back home, but they want to have a presence in the United States. And I'm very proud that Wisconsin now would even be considered for something like that. We weren't the highest offer for this thing. And Ohio is still fighting, trying to get them to change their mind. You know, 10 years ago, we'd have never been in the running for something like that. We've always been ranked as a very poor state for business climate, and now we're ranked in the top 10. So I'm proud that they would consider us, and again, time will tell, I think it's a good risk. On the groundwater, just a second.
Bottled water.
Yeah, true. On the groundwater, obviously we have serious problems around here. It's not something new. You know, when I moved here 30-some years ago as a dairy veterinarian, I would frequently have people say, yeah, every spring my water runs brown out of my faucet. That was just it was just taken for granted. Now we're not willing to accept that, and it has gotten better to some extent, but we're making progress on it. I think the new rules that are coming out now, they've gone through the public hearing phase, and they'll be releasing the final rules within the next month, I would assume, that will limit how much manure can be spread in our area. In the past, those rules were statewide, and they just didn't work for our area. We have demonstrated very clearly that you can follow those rules, and we still have polluted groundwater. So they finally agreed to write new rules for our area. So I'm excited about that. You know, when you talk about the big farms, though, you have to remember that anything we do is going to affect our small farms more than our big farms. They often don't have the resources to comply with these things. And so that's one of the problems with these new rules, that a lot of the farms, especially in Northern Door, if they have to follow these rules to the letter, we are not going to have much in the way of dairy farming north of Sturgeon Bay at all, and even Southern Door is going to be, you know, affected by that. So, you know, we're trying to work out ways that we can protect the groundwater, but not put all these people out of business. That, you know, a lot of them have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in manure storage and all that. Now we're going to come along and say, "Oops, we changed the rules," and they just don't have. With the new rules, for instance, you can't spread on any ground less than 2 feet deep. That's most of Northern Door County. So, you know, I think there's going to be a variance procedure within the rules that they have to apply to the DNR, and if they're willing to do all sorts of things as far as splitting when they spread manure, spread it in the summer when it's the least dangerous, that they'll be able to stay in business. So those are the things we're working through, but I think we've made a lot of progress on that. You know, it's never fast enough. Everybody, you know, that's very clear, but still, you know, I'm happy with where we're heading with it.
Joe, I'd like to backtrack a little on that. Reconstituted the used water from the Fox River and so on. I used to be an engineer for Procter & Gamble, and for every pump that we had out there sucking the water out of the Fox, we had about 3 pumps going through filters and cleaning the water to put back in. So most of the water that was used making the paper was cycled back. The rest was evaporated. But the stuff that went back was almost as pure or purer than the stuff that we got out of the water, out of the Fox. So the environmental rules are pretty well substantiated in this area. Kewanee, for example, a couple of years back, they really had a bad problem over there. And today, they're one of the top cities in the country as far as places to live. It was just recently announced. So I think that we're doing a fine job. I think we're doing great if we keep it up. The thing is, we have to be vigilant. Can't even vigilant, yeah. Say, but
Well,
we have enough rules. It's that we just can't enforce them all, like you're saying.
Well, yeah, I think with the manure, I mean, we have, you know, if you could start the world over again, it's not a great place to have dairy cattle in big numbers up here. It's just not. But, you know, we are where we are, and you can't we're not just gonna shut them down. So we have to, do everything that we possibly can to protect the groundwater. And again, I think we're making big strides, but, yeah. Who else?
Joel, I just wanted to ask you, based on what you had said in response to my question, when you said we spent, what, billions of dollars to China, is that because we owe them debt, or why are we sending them all this money?
Well, just with what we buy, I mean, my iPhone, that's Foxconn. So,
But I remember that we owed them a really lot of money way back
yeah,
when.
I'm not sure what the debt
Continue
is.
or-
I'll leave that to the federal people. I've got enough to worry
Okay.
about. But just the trade deficit obviously hugely goes in their favor. And I think Foxconn and some others are realizing that we're not going to tolerate that forever. They better have a presence here, so.
Thank you.
Yes,
With Foxconn, are we dealing with mainland China or Taiwan?
that's mainland China, I believe.
I thought I had read Taiwan. I could be wrong.
I could be wrong too.
Terry
It is
Bowser.
Taiwan.
Is it Taiwan?
I read Taiwan
Okay,
as well.
I should know that, I guess. Okay, Taiwan. Okay. Yeah, I guess, okay, sorry.
I'd just be curious, Joel,
Mhm.
what if your staff or you have broken out the percentage of the feedback you've gotten on Foxconn, pro and con, critical and not critical.
Yeah, I don't have a percentage for you. I think I got more negative than positive. But, first off, I guess I'm not sure that represents what people actually think. And honestly, it's a representative government. I have to spend my time really studying it, and I don't think that sometimes people have opinions, and I don't mean you, Pat, I know you study very carefully, but often, I have to study it and do what's right, and I'm often privy to information that the general public doesn't see. And I tell you what, with Foxconn, it's died down now because it's actually happening and there's not much to debate, but I have never seen an issue where there was so much misinformation put out. They were saying that, we're gonna.
That's a big statement.
Well, yeah, well.
Go ahead, I'm
in
sorry.
my
I shouldn't have
in my
interrupted.
time,
Yes,
in my
right.
time in state government, nothing else has had that much misinformation. I mean, just people putting stuff out saying we're gonna pay $3 billion and we're not guaranteed any jobs, things like that, and it's like, people that had to know better. The one person's running for governor, and her statements were just false, and they did the fact check that was in the paper, and they rated them false. So there was a lot of misinformation. So I have to study it and do what I believe is best. If people disagree, they vote somebody else in, I guess.
Isn't
but-
it tax exempt statuses and something? Most of that money is tax exempt. It's not actually coming out of our.
Right, it has to do with taxes, although I will say that because basically the bottom line is that if the tax breaks that we give them exceed what they actually owe in taxes, then we will be paying them that. So it's not just
That's what I'm saying.
tax breaks, but they're not getting anything until they've built the facility, until the people are hired. And they're getting paid per job they create. So it's not just money up front, and then we don't know how many people they're gonna hire. For them to get that $3 billion, they have to build that facility, and they have to hire 13,000 people that average over $50,000 per job. And that doesn't include when you average that 50,000, it doesn't include those people that are paid above 100,000. So in order for them to get that money, they need to do all those things. So it's a lot better deal than a lot of states. Washington State, what was it? $7 billion they paid Boeing to keep them there without any guarantees. And in fact, since that time, Boeing has cut back substantially in their workforce. So I think compared to the other deals that other states have done, it's a huge amount of money, but it's not. I think we're protected much better than a lot of states were. Chinese are not. So.
Joel, on the, and I don't know what phase it's in, if it's a resolution that's going on to DNR and the 24 inches of soil, northern door. Do you see a causal relationship between the problems that have been exacerbated by the CAFOs that has led to the fact that now family farms are in dire trouble?
Well,
And I know that's hard. I've got a family that's got farm here also, are involved in farm soil. Is that happening because of that? And whereas that's a tough call one way or the other with the amount of soil is there enough regulation on the CAFOs to mitigate, they seem to be the one
Well,
perpetrating the majority of the problem?
I don't know that I accept that. I think that we need to protect every field, whether it's a small farm on it or a big farm. We have to make sure that they're not putting more manure than can be filtered out safely. The two cases I know of families becoming sick in the area, the one in Egg Harbor a few years ago, and then one down in Luxembourg last year, those were caused by small farms. Neither of them were CAFOs. Although the one in Egg Harbor now they're classified as a CAFO now because of that offense, but as far as cow numbers, they're not a CAFO. So were you gonna say something about that, Jim?
Well, Aaron Hansen, the Door County Conservationist, just said at a meeting this week that they've wanted these laws in place for decades.
Yeah.
They've been working for this all along.
Right. This is, and at Door County Legislative Days, it's been something we've been asking for every time. So I think it's a huge step forward. So I think all farms need to be treated the same. I worked on dairy cattle for 30-some years. I never once worked on a CAFO. I only worked on small farms. So it's not like I have this favoritism towards CAFOs, but I just want them all to be, if a field next to your house pollutes your well, you don't care whether they milk 50 cows or 10,000. It's your well and you don't want manure in it. So I think every field needs to be protected. I'm forgetting where I was going with this, but anyway, the one criticism that some of the conservation groups have made of these rules is that it doesn't protect a big enough area of Wisconsin, because the karst region actually is a U around Wisconsin. It goes all the way down to the southern edge and all the way up the west along the Mississippi a little bit. So in these rules, they scaled it back to just being us in northeast Wisconsin. And for me, that was absolutely the right thing to do, because first off, those other areas have not proven that these rules don't protect their groundwater. They're not enforcing these rules. They're not using the tools they have. So to say now we need to make stricter rules, well, enforce what you have first. But the other part of it is political, that if we had tried to include all of that area, it never would have passed politically. Just the other day, the chairman of the Agriculture Committee had told me, he said, well, I know this is important and I'll support this for your area. But if they had done it for the whole karst region, it never would have gotten to hearing. So those people there in those other areas, there's not the awareness down there. I certainly hope that down the line, and I expect it'll happen, they'll get similar protections for their area, but they haven't done all the other work yet. And if we tried to bite off all of that at one time, we would get nothing. So I think it was absolutely the right decision to just concentrate on our area right now, where everybody knows it's a crisis and we need to deal with it. So. Yes.
I had just one question about, and you maybe talked about it before I got here, but first of all, thank you very much for what you've done so far.
Okay,
I think we've got a really good start here. But the thing that bothers me is the enforcement. How could, if it continues, how can we enforce it, the rules?
Door County, first off, has enforced more strictly than any place in the state. I mean, especially the previous conservationist, Bill Schuster, he's known throughout the state because, he told me, I go to the very edge of the rules and then I lean out a little bit. So, but there was the political will sort of to do that in Door County, where Kewaunee County never had that. Agriculture is a much greater percentage of the economy down there. So in the past, I think, there was not much talk about it. You just didn't, it's relatively recently where all of a sudden people in Kewaunee realize, wow, we've got a problem here. Where Door County, 15 years ago, actually, Door County, 16 or 17 now, I guess, decided they were going to take on the enforcement themselves rather than wait around for the DNR to do it. So that's one of the reasons ours has been much more strict. And we have much less soil than Kewaunee County does, so I think that's the real reason we're not in as bad a situation as Kewaunee is. I've worked with the conservationist in Kewaunee County. She feels like she has adequate enforcement. She doesn't do it herself. She calls the DNR. If somebody complains to her, she calls them. And I've told her, if you feel like you need more, tell me, and I'll fight for that. And she said, no, she thinks she has adequate backup when she needs it. They have not wanted to take on enforcement on their own like Door County has, because they like to have a better working relationship with the farmers. than we have in Door County. In Door County, most of the farmers are scared to call the conservation department because, they're afraid it's gonna draw attention to themselves and then they're gonna be in trouble. Whereas down there, they're much freer to work with them and say, what can I do to make it better and all that. So she wants that relationship to remain. So she would rather have an outside source come in and discipline when they need to than do it herself. We did put more money for enforcement into the budget this time with the DNR. So, I don't think right now that enforcement is the biggest issue with us. It's just that the rules, to me, are not adequate. And hopefully this goes a long way towards it. We'll always have some contaminated wells in this area, I believe. It's just with this shallow soil, it just can happen so easily. You have cracks. That was a cross between cracks and, anyway, yeah, rocks. But anyway, cracks. So you have cracks, you have sinkholes where things can go just directly into the water, So we're always gonna have that. And the other thing in Kewaunee County that, those recent tests that they did showed that 40% of the wells that were contaminated with bacteria, it was from human feces. So it's from bad septic tanks.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that Kewaunee County has not done nearly the job that Door County has in enforcing that. When they, I called after, it's kind of appalling, but when I called them after those results came out, I called the sanitarian and said, what's going on? Why are you? And he said, oh, we're testing like crazy. Yes. Okay, so what do you do when you find a bad septic tank? And he said, well, we write them a letter.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, and then what do you do if they don't respond? Well, we write them another letter. And that's as far as it goes. Where in Door County, man, if you don't respond to that first letter, you're in court. So they had a backlog of like 100 wells that they knew were bad that they had not forced. But now, after that came out, they woke up and they've been on it. So I think that part will get better. But it's not just manure causing the problems. We don't have any soil, so it's always going to be a challenge for us here. So, yes.
Charlotte Hanson, and I'm new here. I'm almost an innocent. Thank you. This has been so informative.
Oh, great.
I'm reading all of these things. I'm in healthcare.
Oh.
And I look at this as being, how can these people miss this ball? Just a little bit of pollution today, people are going to get really sick soon. Thank you. You've really informed me.
Good.
Just, and you can dispatch of my question, I think, fairly quickly, but it's on the clean water arena. And I moved from Illinois, from Iowa. Boy, do I understand the issue of groundwater pollution, to Illinois, in Chicago, where unheard of, to right on the bay here. And I'm 11 miles from Menominee. I hear immediately, bags unpacked, back 40. Then, the next thing I hear about, and I want you to just please tell me where we are with this.
Okay.
I hear about Prove It First is going away. And I cannot fathom why, and I know where you stand on this, thank you, why people would want to repeal a bill that's Prove It First. That's pretty simple. I'm in healthcare. Oh, gee, you better believe I better prove something first before I start cutting on people. Just saying. It's part of the tenet that I've dedicated my life to. Can you please tell me where we are with Back 40, with, it started out SB 395, then went into AB 499.
I never remember the numbers, so.
I don't either, but they're the same thing.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
They're the same
Anyway,
thing.
yeah.
Prove It First,
Yeah.
being amended. If you can just educate me on that, and I'm sure.
Sure. The back 40, as was mentioned earlier, that's in Michigan, so we have very
Yes.
limited control over that. I was one that wrote a letter, I have an issue with it, but I'm not gonna ever get to vote on it, obviously, that's in Michigan. Michigan has agreed that they will follow the Wisconsin standards rather than their own, because ours are much more strict than theirs are. So they're going to do that, but I still think it's a very delicate area. It's very close to the bay, so it certainly has potential to impact us here. So honestly, I'm not sure where it stands in Michigan, in their legislature right now, where they are with that. As far as Prove It First, I'm hearing different things, whether that really has a chance or not. I intend to vote against it, but, and there is a fair amount of opposition. You know, Governor Walker had voted in favor of Prove It First way back when he was in the Assembly, so it puts him in a little bit of a bind to sign that now getting rid of it when he voted to put it in the first place, you know. So I think there's a good chance that that will not go through is what I'm hearing, but time will tell on that. I can't promise that. You know, but it's a balance in those areas in northern Wisconsin where they have so few jobs and all of that. That's why they want that, because they want mining up there, you know.
But, and I think it was a little bit mentioned in Foxconn too, and maybe we're not as naive, but these mines and I heard, misinformation or not, 2 mines were poised to come into Wisconsin, just waiting for Prove It First to be repealed, because of course they can't prove it first. That's been our protection for 20 years, I have read. But mines aren't going to hire the average Wisconsin citizen to dig and to drill and to,
Yeah.
just saying, maybe a few, but
Yeah.
not enough.
And I honestly, I can't, I really can't speak to the economics of it, how many jobs would be created. But the people that are promoting this bill, Senator Tiffany, I mean,
Yeah.
that's his district. So
Yeah.
he, you know, so obviously he thinks it's gonna be an economic benefit up there. But I guess I'm not informed enough to know how many jobs that would create if those mines do come in there.
I don't know as
And
anybody
the quality of
knows.
the jobs.
But
Yeah, I can't answer that, but, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Like I said, I intend to vote against it, but, and I think there's a good chance it won't happen, but.
what can we watch out for? What do we look for? Is it gonna be in print? There will be a vote on, or how do we
Yeah,
stay vigilant?
do you remember the bill number? I don't remember.
Yes, it started out Senate Bill 395, then it went to Assembly Bill, I believe 499,
Okay,
and I
You said
believe they are
SB
basically the same.
395, you said it was?
Yes, and it's Prove It First, that's
Yeah.
what is.
Can somebody explain what that is? Prove it first.
You have to, any industry, any mine coming into the state of Wisconsin has to prove that what they're going to do, drill a mine, let's say,
Okay.
will not cause harm.
Yeah, they basically wanted them, if before a new mine came in, they wanted them to be able to show them a case where something like this was done and didn't cause any problem.
Does this
And
only
that they-
refer to
they
mineral
did it
mining into
themselves.
mines, or does it refer to any of it?
I believe just
I
mines.
think it was just mining.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, I can't find it right now, but I'm
No.
not sure, if you look it up, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time trying to find it right
I
now.
just wanna know how to stay vigilant.
Yeah, if you look it up on the legislature website, it'll tell you if it's scheduled for a hearing. And if they do a public hearing on that, that'll draw huge crowds. You know, there'll be,
Joel, this is just a suggestion that what she just said and you just said, I had been meaning to say to you, you send out your weekly emails, which I read religiously, of course, and
You too.
it would be helpful if you would, it would be helpful to add to that, if you could get your staff people to add to it, what's coming up and the
That's a good
links
point, yeah.
to, the links to things like that, so that it would be easy to get to
Yeah.
seeing what's happening.
okay, yeah, that's a good point. I'll try to have them put that on there if there are important bills coming up, so. And actually, you can watch those on Wisconsin Eye, it's a website. Any of those controversial hearings, they stream those on the computer, so you can watch all of those.
Wisconsin what?
Eye, EYE.
I.
Is it EYE?
Yep, yep.
Hey, and
And you can sign
compliments
up
to
for
your staff.
alerts.
I got a personal phone call. My
Good.
jaw dropped. You know, they followed up and were diligent.
Well, that's good.
Wow.
We really try to be very responsive.
You were.
Occasionally
Thank
things
you.
slip through, but we try do our best on that, so.
Thanks, thank you.
Oh,
Is
sure.
that nonpartisan?
Wisconsin,
Eye is
yeah,
neutral?
yeah, it's nonpartisan, yeah. Again, they do all of our floor sessions, they do all the hearings, and even they have archives, so if you miss it, you can go back and watch them later.
And they're also on Charter Channel 985, I think.
What, Charter
Oh.
Channel?
Charter Channel 985, I think. It's leased in the 980s.
Yeah,
We have
that,
charter, that's all
that
we need.
wouldn't be a bad idea for us in those newsletters to,
But that would be
That's my-
to
so
put in about
helpful.
Wisconsin Eye so that people know to watch that. I
We
don't,
print you out and
yeah.
peruse it until the next one comes out.
Yeah, that would, yeah,
Yeah.
that would be good for people that don't know that, because that's an easy way to keep some of those hearings. If they do, when they have the hearing on the mines, that'll last for many, many hours. But if you watch the beginning, that's when the authors are on, testify though, and that's usually sort of the best part, because they get grilled on it, so.
I want to thank you for your newsletters too. I also read them regularly and enjoy them. I want to thank you also for your various supports of water quality in the county,
Thank you.
in the area. I just want to share a little anecdote with you. Last weekend, we had a family reunion. I had a brother and his family come from Texas and another from Illinois. They drove up. And the first thing they said to me when they got out of the car after some hugs was, "Why are your roads so crappy?" This thing. And that was unsolicited.
Yeah,
And I had already, the day before, sent an email saying, okay, we're having a family gathering, politics are off the table, because we're not on the same page. So I had to protect myself a little bit and said, we're not talking about our roads. Well, you talk about our roads.
sure. Well, the transportation budget was the big controversy in our state budget, and which is why we were supposed to have it passed on July 1st, and we didn't pass it till September, because we in the Assembly wanted to increase some fees so that we didn't bond for as much as ended up being bonded for. But the governor promised to veto anything we put in there, and the Senate was going to back up whatever he said. So we didn't have a very strong bargaining position. We did end up with a little bit of a compromise so that we didn't borrow as much as we wanted to, but it's not, if you ask me what I'm most proud of, that's I guess what I'm least proud of, that we didn't do more on that.
Is there any hope to get that addressed?
It will, I mean, I don't know, it's,
We can't borrow our way out of that problem.
well, I'm agreeing with you. I will say that in Governor Walker's defense, that his overall bonding in this budget is lower than in decades that we've had. So it's not like we're just borrowing like crazy, it's just transportation we're borrowing.
But he's delaying projects that really are
No,
needed.
I agree. I mean, I won't argue that at all. And part of the problem is that our interstate system was built in the 50s and early 60s, and now it's 50 years old, and it's time to replace it. The feds built it the first time, but we're on the hook to replace them. So our expenses are going way up all of a sudden in the last few years. And the biggest mistake by far, and it was under the previous administration, was that they took away indexing on the gas tax, because it used to go up when the price of gas went up. And they took that away. If they had left that in, we would have $900 million in the bank, and you'd pay 6 cents more for your gas. So
So why didn't they put it back in?
I would love to put it back in, but the governor said
No new tax.
he would veto that as well.
Well, I
don't-
know what he said and all of that, but I mean, it's.
No,
it's
I don't view
political.
that, I do not view that as an increase in tax. That's just keeping up with, with cost of living. And some people say, well, gas price is too volatile, but even if you don't want to do that, just adjust it for cost of living on everything and have it go up by that amount. So I'm with you on that. I disagree with him on that. For whatever reason, he would not. He was very, very stubborn on that, and it wasn't pretty, but.
Yeah, moving here from California, I came here and it was like, it's only $75 to register a vehicle. I was used to $400 per
Oh, my
car.
goodness.
Plus, we have an electric vehicle and,
Hawaii is the same.
everybody's saying,
They're
oh,
gonna tax.
Hawaii is the
well,
same.
that's fine. That's
Yeah.
fine, because we're not
Fine.
paying a gas tax. And we
It's
need to
amazing.
support
And
our
your cars are helping
roads.
to deteriorate.
Our-
There's still a
yeah.
lot of cars.
It's, but
It's
it
hard
was
not to have.
it was a real shock to come here and everybody's complaining about the registration fees.
Yeah.
And I really think we need to have a statewide real discussion about the importance of our highways and roads, and to let people know, hey, if you've got a junker car, number
Get
one,
rid
you're,
of it.
yeah, if it's not in tune, you're polluting the atmosphere, so you're adding to our carbon footprint. This is not good, it is not healthy, and we're killing our planet. I'm an environmentalist. So that's why.
She owns a Tesla too, it's really cool.
Yes, it's, and I don't think most people realize electric cars are coming, and they're coming
Yes,
big
they are.
time, and also trucks, big time trucking. Tesla's ready to roll out an electric truck. There's another company called Nikola in Europe, I believe, that is rolling out their electric truck. These are big semis. They're going long distances, and they're electric. We're not ready for these. We're still back in the 1950s technology.
Looking for plugs.
Look, which brings me to the point, Tesla has said that they're going to put a supercharger here in Sturgeon Bay.
Oh,
So,
Really?
because of you.
we have called them. But, you know, we need to have a real conversation with our people in the state to let them understand that our roads are super important and we need to pay for them with our registration fees. I'm all for upping the fees. I think
Yeah.
we're getting way too cheap.
Well, and overwhelmingly, that's what I heard people saying, you know, just raise it a little bit, we need our roads fixed. So I'm with you on that, but, you know, we,
My brothers are with you too.
yeah, actually, Door County, our roads are better than the vast majority of the
I think
state,
they were
so.
talking about
42, 57 coming north.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, I can't get across half the time.
Yes.
This Friday was terrible.
So, what else you want to talk about, anything?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll talk about something else that you've probably heard this once before. But my opinion is that the school voucher program, and I know you're involved with that, because you're in charge of the education committee, right?
I'm vice chair of education.
Vice chair, oh, vice chair, okay. So you're, and I've talked to you about this before, but do you see that segregation is a thing that's causing polarization in this country, especially in Milwaukee? And the vouchers program seems to me, only because my son has seen it, because he worked in a voucher school, that they're very segregated. And it's so different from what they had when they had the 222 or 22 program, where they spread the students throughout the county and the suburbs. Is that something that concerns you at all, that we're polarizing at government expense?
Well, I'm not sure
the
that,
society?
yeah. I guess the whole voucher thing, that's a different issue. As far as whether it segregates, I mean, honestly, I think that the intent of it was to fight segregation, sort of, because, for instance, on the, you know, I have relatives in Baltimore, and in Baltimore, anybody with any money at all goes to a private school. So that really increases segregation. So all the white kids are in the private schools and all the black kids are in the public schools. So it was really meant to allow disadvantaged kids to be able to go to the private schools, was the original intent. But Milwaukee overall is ranked as like the most segregated city in the country. It's, you know, all of the whites have left for Waukesha and the suburbs and all. And so I'm not sure that to me that the voucher schools caused that, but I don't think they caused that. Whether it makes it worse or not, yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, you got when you have all black schools that are voucher schools, these people don't have a chance to intermingle with other ethnic groups.
Mm-hmm.
And that, in my opinion, is one of the root causes of not understanding each other.
Yeah, well, I certainly agree with you that the more interaction you have, the better you're gonna, you know, I understand your, that ideal, I guess, but whether, you know, voucher schools contribute or what can be done about it that way. You know, I think the forced busing thing that we had back in the, I guess it was in the 70s when it spread across the country, I mean, I think there was so much uproar over that I think it was viewed as sort of a failed experiment. But it did achieve some of the goals as far as, sort of forcing people to get to know each other. But,
And my son now, instead of teaching there, he teaches at an all-Hmong school.
oh,
So, see, we're seeing.
It's also a voucher school.
Yeah, we're seeing them not getting out and getting with
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah, and the idea behind vouchers is that you allow parents to choose for their kids, that they know best for their kids and all that. But it seems like, obviously, they're choosing to put their kids in with other kids that are just like them, I guess, but.
I don't think vouchers are the answer. I've seen vouchers being used the other way, that people that would normally integrate with public schools are leaving public schools and going to private schools, like Catholic schools, for example, which I'm one of. You know, I kind of grew up in a Catholic family, but when I was going to school, we, in the Catholic schools, were integrated. We had all kinds of races within there, and I don't, it was good. We had a good time, and we learned together, and we were all smart. I mean, it was, Catholics aren't stupid, right?
Good looking, above average.
Right, we had a good time. So anyway, but you know what I mean about vouchers now?
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that now, with vouchers, anybody can go to the Catholic schools, and it could go too far over on one side real easily.
Well, I think vouchers in certain circumstances can give some kids opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Right.
I'm a little skeptical of trying to expand it statewide. If nothing else, I'm not sure that we can afford to educate that many new kids. It's different around the state, though. In Milwaukee, you have those voucher schools that are almost all vouchers, and if they ever took the voucher program away, they would close down. Whereas out in the state, like at, say, Green Bay, Notre Dame, they have a small number of voucher kids that they take. So, I've had the schools around here ask me about it and stuff. I sort of advise them, be careful if you get into it. You don't want to take so many kids that you rely on it. I would, because then you're gonna.
That's right.
You're gonna have to do whatever they tell you to do. And if you want to keep your independence and teach what you want to teach, I'd be very skeptical of that. But I got off track where I was going. I don't remember now.
That was a good.
But anyway, so.
Follow up on the, kind of follow up on the polarization issue, at least based on the normal press, the country feels divided. I'm not seeing a whole lot, and I don't spend all day looking, but I spend a fair amount of time within the state government, that still nobody trusts each other, period. Now, obviously, in politics, the first goal is to get elected, because if you don't get elected, you can't do something for people. So it's built, it's into the cake, it's cooked in there. So, you hear discussions, are, your colleagues on either side of the aisle and in both houses, do they talk about this, or is it all about, we're gonna do this and screw them, and of course, you can't talk to them, because if you do, now you're gonna be ostracized by your own party.
Yeah.
I think my own opinion is you might get caught in that once in a while yourself. So do you see anything happening there that gives any hope, or just continuation of what's going on?
Well, I have friends in the other party, certainly, and
this is not a personal thing, it's just
Yeah,
a
no.
generic,
yeah.
you're there.
I mean, I certainly agree with you. Things are extremely polarized, but in the assembly, the Democratic leader Peter Barca was just sort of forced out recently, and in fact, not that there weren't other things leading up to it, but the reason he got forced out is because he voted for Foxconn.
Right.
And so which is pretty pathetic that he did what he thought was best for his district, and the caucus kicks him out. And it's happened in other things. I'm hopeful that the new leader, Gordon Hintz, and I get along well with him, and he's very partisan, no question about that.
That's just what I was gonna say.
But he's also, to me, he's a little more, even though he's full of bluster and all that, I've had a beer with him and talked, and he's a guy that I think, I'm trying to be confident that we can work with him better. You know, I see the other party, they, you know, what they do, and I can be critical of that, and they're, I'm sure, critical of ours. But, you know, for instance, they've loosened up on me a little bit. But for anybody that's in what they view as a vulnerable seat, where it's a really split district, they would never allow them to co-sponsor any bill I put out. You know, and I would put out things that were common sense that they had to support, but none of them would support it. And if they did, one of the Democrats, he was a co-sponsor on this campus free speech bill. They kicked him out of his committees because of that. So that kind of stuff is really counterproductive. So I'm hoping there will be less of that, because they come to me and they want me to co-sponsor their bills. And sometimes I'm like, well, you've never co-sponsored anything I put out. You know, why, you know, so.
Now, I'm assuming that's happening on the Republican side too. So I think it's a bipartisan issue.
Yeah, it's not, honestly, because we have a big majority, you know, I'll be honest, because we have a big majority, our party doesn't control people as much as they do. Robin Voss has never told me I have to vote one way or the other on any bill. Whereas with them, they are definitely told. And part of it's because of, you know, again, he knows he can afford to lose a few people and still pass what he wants. But, so anyway, that's sort of.
And I agree, and I don't want to, this is not derogatory putting you on a spot, but also just language-wise where you mentioned, I don't want to, this isn't something that I want to choose to put political capital in. Well, implied in that is that you would spend political capital to back something. And, you know, I'm referring back to United to Amend, but right now that's completely sponsored by Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
And for you to cross and co-sign on that would, I'm guessing, cost you some political capital.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is, I think it happens on both sides.
You're
And
right. No, that's fair enough.
In general,
yeah,
hopefully things get better,
right.
because I think people are
That's fair
really.
enough. It would cost me some political capital if I signed on to that. So, you know, you have to choose your battles a little bit, and
Right,
people
and I
have.
understand it's the reality you're in, but
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you see any hope that it's gonna get better.
I'm sort of hopeful, but it's a pretty polarized world right now. So, and
Enough said.
you know, what happens on the national level affects us as well. So the more polarized that is, you know, we get forced into this stuff as well. But go ahead.
I just have one thing to say. This is how I believe. We're like this. The Democrats and the Republicans are so far apart here. What we need to do is elect people that are moderates in here to get anything done. I just don't see we're gonna get anywhere like this.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I would agree, but.
And I consider you one of the moderates.
Well, yeah, the problem is that it's you reflect the district you're in, you know. The people from Waukesha County, where it's 70% Republican,
Yeah.
they elect if you're the slightest bit moderate, somebody's gonna challenge you in the primary that's more conservative. So they're always trying to fight to be the furthest to the right. And
That's how we've gotten there.
Yeah, and then you have the Madison type Democrats where they need to be as far to the right as they possibly can, or to the left rather, where somebody's gonna come along and challenge them in the primary. So the districts like mine that are split, that's where you get your more moderate people, because I have to, you know, I can't just blow off the Democrats, you know.
Yeah.
I need their support. So that is the problem, I guess.
And a shameless plug again for United to Amend. A little nudge in that direction, because both sides get primaried, and that's what we're always told they're scared of. Wherever you are, you're gonna get primaried from the opposite, far left or far right.
So you fix that by
And-
proper gerrymandering.
Well,
No.
put that together with the United to Amend type stuff, and it's a step in the right direction. It's not gonna solve it, but.
Yes.
So, what are some of the disadvantages of promoting Badger Care? I mean, that's where we can actually get it onto the marketplace, competing with the Aetnas and all the other ones.
Yeah.
What are some of the disadvantages? I mean, we know the advantages are, it's a tremendous cost savings, but we don't know, what are some of, the papers never talk about the disadvantages.
Yeah, and I have not dealt with that enough to know the economics of it. I mean, obviously, it's gonna be an economic, how much it costs us on the state level, because that's subsidized, but, that would be, and I don't consider myself an expert on that right now, that, you know, we don't deal that much with healthcare, but, so,
Who are the people that are dealing with the healthcare?
Well, I mean,
I
obviously.
mean, it's a bill right now that they're
Yeah.
proposing. I don't
Yeah.
know when it's gonna come up or not.
Yeah. And I just haven't studied enough to know the cost of it and seen, the Fiscal Bureau does an analysis on any bill like that. So that's what I haven't seen yet, to see what they say it'll cost, because that's gonna be the big downside of it, is how much it's gonna cost us, I guess, So,
Oh, are you saying that the state is gonna subsidize it to the point where it is actually cheaper than the private insurances?
well, yeah, I mean, the
Is that
reason
what
is.
your opinion is?
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason it's cheaper, is because it's subsidized, so.
Oh, I thought it was because it was administered by the state.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, well, with Badger Care, you can set your rates and tell the doctors, well, I'm gonna pay you 60 cents on the dollar or whatever, which private companies can't do.
They do it though.
So that, I mean, there is subsidy, and then there's also,
Negotiations.
yeah, which, that's the reason it's cheap, because they can do that. But, so,
Thank you.
sure. Anything else anybody wants to talk about?
Oh, yeah, there's one more thing, but I'm not ready to ask the question yet.
Well, I guess I just wanna add my voice so Dan isn't the only one talking about the United to Amend, because, what he handed you, saying that now over half the population of Door County is coming in saying, this is a very popular bill with citizens, and you know all the reasons why. I just wanted to, put another voice out there to say, there is a lot of support for this. And it would be, I think it would be a win for someone to get out there and tap that, because people, and it would be to the advantage of both parties, the whole political process, if you yanked away those dark money things, and you could even, the bill itself won't do that, but it provides the amendment provides the groundwork for being able to have a McCain-Feingold bill that won't get turned over at the Supreme Court level. So, I don't know, just saying,
Okay.
there's
Okay.
a lot of people out there very supportive of carrying that on.
Okay, well, thanks. Anything else anybody has for me? Okay, well, again, thanks for coming, good discussion, appreciate it.
Thank you.